Yep. Baby. Oh, sorry. I was singing along with the intro. It ended, so I should have stopped singing. Especially because people can hear me now. That's not
and see you. I'm not sure which is worse.
I'm wondering why my microphone seems to be so cockeyed. Is it the camera? Let's see. It is the camera. There we go. It's not so cockeyed now.
I usually find I look cockeyed because my eyes aren't level, but that's a different story.
Oh no, I have a condition that has been wreaking havoc on me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Enough about my health issues. As long as I'm breathing, I'm here doing this. It's like when we go out and the boss likes to dance, and I have really bad knees, and sometimes they're bad, and sometimes they're worse. And I'll be sitting there and people will come up to me and go, Frank, why aren't you smiling? And I'm saying, because I'm an effing pain. That's why I'm not smiling. What's the matter? My knees are killing me. But I just saw you on the dance floor. Yeah,
that's why they're killing me.
and my lady loves to dance. So, either I do it or she's going to have to find a substitute. And that's a slippery slope I don't want to be a part of.
Oh, I get it.
I'm at the age where relationships are real easy. Are you breathing? Yep. Okay, good. We're good to go. Because that's what happens at our age. Okay, so speaking of are you breathing, the Leafs are in danger of suffering a real negative problem with their team. They could be losing somebody, Aaron. How devastating would it be? And who is it?
Strictly from a scoring point of view, probably not all that deadly. But when we're talking about a grit and a heart perspective, slightly more deadly. At the end of the day, though, it didn't really make a difference because he did successfully clear waivers. And that was Michael Pezzetta. The good news is, because they put him on waivers on Friday, he cleared on Saturday, so he's going to be able to play with the Marlies for their postseason run. Which I'll be going to a couple of games for. So Wednesday and Saturday are the two home games in their best of 3 series with the Rochester Americans. The good news is he had 10 points in 38 games for the Marlies, 4 goals and 6 assists. He played 9 games down the stretch of the most dismal stretch of the season with the Maple Leafs, but didn't have a point. He actually entered the league as a 6th round pick in 2016 by the Montreal Canadiens. Now, he does have legitimate NHL experience, including 63 games with Montreal in 2022, 2023. But he did sign with the Leafs for a 2-year contract worth $1.625 million. Now, the good news is nobody claimed him off waivers, which means that this is an NHL player that the Marlies will have on their back end to give them a start as they give them a little bit of a hand as they start against the Rochester Americans.
And a tough playoff game that you have to play, right? Which we've talked about off air, and we'll get to that on air. Well, here we'll touch on that now because the subject actually is there. The physicality of the playoffs. I was mentioning to Aaron, and I'll mention it to you all now, because we do a Leaf show and we talk about the Leafs and we're focused on the Maple Leafs. I found out from Aaron, he does the same thing I do. He watches very dedicatedly and follows what's going on with the Leafs, and I'll watch the interviews and all that stuff. Now, because we're not really looking at any team with the same kind of focus, we have more time to watch more hockey. And in watching more playoff hockey this season, I'm watching 3 series in particular with a lot of attention, and that is the Canadian series, right, with the Canadian teams, and also watching to see how Marner's doing, I must admit, just to see how he's doing, how are the playoffs doing. and watching those games, it really came home. All the talk that we've had over the past few years, and I've talked about the lack of physicality that the Toronto Maple Leafs had in the playoffs. When you see these series and you see it isn't about all of a sudden noticing things are physical. It's the confrontation that becomes very evident now that you're watching all these other teams play. You're watching, as you said, how long did it take for a fight in the Ottawa game?
Oh, 3 seconds.
So in essence, I guess what I'm trying to say is what you're seeing is a Montreal team that's known for historically for being, offensive, scoring, class act, all that stuff. They can get down and dirty. We witnessed it. We saw Ottawa do it, but we haven't seen Edmonton do it because they're playing tonight. So we haven't had a chance to see Edmonton. So when we see Edmonton, I'm pretty sure. I'm checking again. I'm rebooting. Yeah, I'm sure that it's going to be pretty physical. That game's going to be pretty physical. And that is what it takes to win in the playoffs. You have to beat the team in the trenches. You Conn Smythe saying you got to beat them in the alleys, right? And that's what's got to happen. And that's what all these series reminded me and what was lacking with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the captains have all gotten involved. Nope, not the Montreal captain. In fact, when we saw the Ottawa game, the two captains were the 3-second fight, right? Was both captains. So, it's not like captains don't have to get involved in the pugilistic side of the game. In fact, in some ways, would you agree, Aaron, they need to? Like when we saw what happened to Austin Matthews, it's a reflection of the way he plays and the way the core four played. When your top guys don't have any bite, why would you think everybody else would?
Yeah, watching Austin Matthews get consistently ragdolled every single series that he's played in for the Maple Leafs as assistant captain and later on as captain, it makes you wonder where that sort of thing is. As much as I dislike Brady Tkachuk, the fact that he would step up and drop the gloves in the first game against Carolina Hurricanes captain Jordan Staal is an indication to me that he takes his role slightly more seriously, it seems, than Austin Matthews does. Whether it's my interpretation of that is valid or not. The fact of the matter is, I don't think we'll ever see Austin Matthews drop the gloves because he's too afraid to hurt his hands or his wrists. He's had issues with that before.
His wrists are pretty fragile. But,
at the end of the day, there are certain things that a captain needs to do. And if he's not going to step up and do it, I'm not necessarily sure he needs to stay the captain.
But this here can be used too. There's other parts of the body that you can make contact with, right? So this is the one thing I've got to say that was different this year than any other year beyond the years that Austin Matthews has been captain, as you mentioned, as an alternate as well. And since he came to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I count it as the first time I heard Austin Matthews say, I need to do more in that post-game interview. I've never heard him take any responsibility, voice it. I'm not saying he doesn't think it, he doesn't believe it, but I'm not a mind reader, so I kind of have to hear it come out of his mouth. This is the first time I've heard it come out of his mouth.
No, and I think it's part of your maturation as a player as well, is realizing when you have to take more responsibility for what's going on, and you have to be more responsible for your own play and less concerned about motivating others. I mean, all of these guys are professional athletes. They should all be already motivated to play. It's not necessarily the captain's job to motivate them, but it's certainly his job to help focus them.
I think example is something that's in sports. It's not something that I don't think the value of what you say is irrelevant if you don't follow it up physically. And that's every sport. It doesn't matter. Every team sport, I should say, every team sport, right? Let's talk about the Maple Leafs some more and talk about an old player that might be making a contribution or explain.
Well, the hope is that they're trying to bring in a much beloved former Leaf who still has some fans upset at him because there was an opportunity for him to be traded that he refused to join in on, which helped Maple Leafs stagnate. But, at the end of the day, Matt Sundin is still viewed as a beloved Maple Leaf. Sundin was interviewing apparently for a prominent yet unspecified role under the next general manager or operations boss. Now, this isn't the first time anxious Leafs brass tried tapping into past on-ice leaders for help. So far, bringing in alumni hasn't really moved the needle much. They brought in Doug Gilmour, as a player development consultant in 2006 under John Ferguson Jr. He later tried an assistant coaching position with the AHL Marlies, and then that led to him becoming the general manager of the Kingston Frontenacs of the OHL. But after he left that job, he's only returned to the Maple Leafs has been as a community ambassador. Same goes for Wendell Clark and Daryl Sittler. They both hold public liaison roles. It's one of those things where they may be going back to the well because other teams have had limited success by bringing in former players like, Joe Nieuwendyk, Brian Burke, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily a guarantee of success, but it might have the unfortunate side effect of making Matt Sundin the dartboard guy for Keith Pelly. So that's
I think, and this would not be the first time that the Maple Leafs, bring in a trophy wife.
Yeah, I mean, bringing in a dartboard guy to deflect attention away is definitely something.
I really am concerned that the Toronto Maple Leafs and Keith Pelly fired their general manager and did it at a time that was well before some other teams have done it. But while they were the first to look for one, they're the last ones to find one, it seems. Now, Vancouver's looking for a GM now because their GM has been fired at the end of the season. I don't know. There's rumors about, they're going to go off the board. Aaron, they're going to go with somebody that doesn't have any experience as a GM. I'm not sure the not being a GM experience or having the experience of being a GM or something GM like. I do believe that's important, whether it's specifically with GM experience. I guess that's debatable. But boy, when you go off the board like the Leafs have done in the past, they paid a price with Ferguson, with Dubas. I am not in any way suggesting that either of those two, Dubas especially, isn't going to be a good general manager. I've said it for years, even when he was there. The learning experience is going to cost the Leafs for him to learn, which it did. It cost them a bit to learn, for him to learn. I hope they can get somebody, whoever it is, Aaron. The Leafs need somebody that can turn assets, right, into other assets if those assets are about to expire. We can't have the Marner experience again in Toronto. They can't afford another Marner experience. If they think that Matthews is coming back, that's one thing. If they know he's coming back, that's another. If their intention to keep him, they should renegotiate the contract now and make a plan with him on the roster. But if they don't want to have him, right? If they are thinking of him going, they should just cut bait. End of story. Just take what is asset value and invest it into other assets that could be beneficial in the future. I think there's two reasons why he should be an asset accumulator. We should be able to get assets for him here in Toronto. And I think it's because his value can be high, and see if we find a team that's willing to give them the assets. And I think there'll always be sawdust following him around whenever he's playing in the playoffs. There'll always be a flow of sawdust following him because he's always going to push hard. And I think for two reasons. He hasn't been able to be a real asset in the playoffs. And you know what? for his own sake, he needs a fresh start. Even if he does well somewhere else, if the Leafs can get some decent assets, sometimes the only way he's going to be a better player is if they trade him. And that happens in hockey careers all the time, where guys get that second chance and play much better.
Yeah, it's the new environment sort of thing, the fresh start effect that usually kicks in when something like that happens. And honestly, at this point, it might be feeling a little bit stale for Austin Matthews here in Toronto. He may just need something like that to get everything kickstarted again.
And the Leafs have to do it when there's a value attached to his departure. It just has to be that way.
The real hope is they don't make the mistake of trying to bring him back once he's refound his mojo, because I don't think that would work.
Oh, well, he it's a slim edge of the, well, it's not a slim edge, it's a slim edge of the wedge, but more it's a knife's edge, where next year it could lead to them getting much less for him than they could get for him this year. Or they may get lucky and all of a sudden, oh, where'd that come from? That's a nice surprise. We don't know. But that's why the people with the tall foreheads that get the big checks make the tough decisions. They're the ones that have to make those tough decisions. And they got to make the right ones. That's what they've got to do. One of the right decisions the Leafs have made, and the player himself, is Cowan has gone to the Marlies, and he's providing some dividends for that team.
Oh, 100%. His ability to play make, especially as it was visible in the NHL level, has been very nice to see down with the Marlies. Got a breakaway goal against the Rocket the other day to make it 3-0. That was absolutely fantastic. And the fact that he's willing to go and play in the AHL as opposed to just starting to sit out the season speaks, I think, to his desire to go down to a lower level and see if he can't make some hay down there. And obviously, he's going to be helping to try to help the Marlies try to make some noise at the end of their season. It's a logical place for him to be, so it can help continue his development. So that's a smart move on his part. I'm sure he's got some people that are working for him and with him, and sort of gave him a nudge saying, you may want to consider doing this, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But at the same time, the fact that he's willing to do it is I think speaks volumes to him. And he's only 21. He's going to be turning 21 in May, so he's still got a lot of road ahead of him.
Playoff hockey.
Yep.
It's a good experience, playoff hockey. Okay, let's go over to some other sports that involve the Maple Leaf, and let's talk about the Vancouver Warriors. They won the regular season crown. They've come a long way, Aaron.
They definitely have. From the organization that they were a couple years ago, barely being able to put butts into seats. They managed to finish in first with a 13-5 record. They put the boots to the Philadelphia Wings. May they rest in peace. That organization has had its share of troubles over the years. And the National Lacrosse League is looking to sell them again. After that 17-10 win over the Wings in Vancouver on Saturday, coupled with Colorado's 9-8 loss to the Calgary Roughnecks, that puts them solidly in first. So, they get a single game quarterfinal on Friday at Rogers Arena against the Halifax Thunderbirds, who finished 8th place with a record of 8-10, and we'll work from there. But congratulations to them on sealing in the regular season.
Saskatchewan rushed to win wasn't how they won. The Rock were rock steady at the beginning of the game, having a very good lead throughout the game until the last few minutes of the game, and then they fell apart in Saskatchewan.
The wheels just fell off, and it's not really anything that you can do about that sort of thing. When you had Levi Anderson and Robert Church score goals 20 seconds apart to tie the game. And then you had Haley score in the overtime to just salt it away there. It was looking really, really hopeful for a while there for an actual Rock home playoff game, which would have been really nice.
How often do you see How often do you see a along the floor goal?
Yeah, it doesn't happen all that often.
That was terrible. Rosie didn't look good on that play. he rolled the ball on the left side of the net. But Rosie was great, and like they were saying it during the broadcast, and I was thinking it, and then I heard them say it in the broadcast. I said, okay, good, we're on the same page. Where he did what, when we talk about goaltending, he was very quiet. He didn't. There was no extra moves. He just stood there. He'd move his shoulder just a few inches, and he'd have the ball hit his shoulder. He played a very quiet goaltending. Unfortunately, the game didn't end quietly. It was a big boom, and Saskatchewan fans were thrilled. And there was a lot. There was a lot at stake. Home floor advantage was at stake. The winner would get home floor advantage in the playoffs, and that means the Rocks start on the road and the Rush start at home.
So Friday, April 24th and Saturday, April 25th are going to be the quarterfinal games. They're all single elimination in the National Lacrosse League. It's going to be the Halifax Thunderbirds playing in Vancouver on Friday, April 24th. You can catch that on TSN. Also, San Diego in 7th place are going to be playing Colorado on Saturday, April 25th at 9 Eastern. Toronto is going to be in Saskatchewan. That's the 6th seed Toronto playing the 3 seed Saskatchewan on Saturday, April 25th, also at 9 p.m. And then 5th place Buffalo is going to be at Georgia on Saturday, April 25th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. After that, Thursday, April 30th through Sunday, May 3rd, and Thursday, May 7th through Sunday, May 10th, if necessary, are going to be the semifinals, which are best of 3. And then the NLL finals will be played on the weekends of Thursday, May 14th, the Sunday, May 17th, and Thursday, May 21st through Monday, May 25th, if necessary. If both semifinals are sweeps, then the NLL could begin potentially as early as the weekend of May 7th through 10th.
Tell us about the PWHL, the Scepters, and the games remaining.
So with 2 games left in the regular season right now, things aren't quite settled. I mean, you're basically looking here at Seattle and Vancouver are out. But New York, Toronto, and Ottawa are all still fighting for that last spot. With 2 games left, if Ottawa loses both games and New York wins both of theirs, they could potentially leapfrog the Scepters, depending on what happens. Right now, Ottawa has the potential to finish with 45 points. Toronto has the potential to finish with 43, and New York has the potential to finish with 40, thanks to the 3-2-1 point system. But as it currently stands, the last playoff spot is still up for grabs. So it's going to be very exciting down the stretch with 2 games left each.
Wow. I got to say, talking about the Raptors now, playing Cleveland, a team they didn't lose to in the regular season. They need a little more swish and a lot less clunk. That's what I saw in that game, where they weren't hitting free throws. They weren't hitting, field goals. They weren't hitting threes. They did not have a hot hand, and they need to get the ball to AI.
No, they definitely do. They ended up losing to Cleveland 126-113. They stayed relatively close through the first half. They kept it respectable at least. But then Cleveland opened up a 22-point lead. They got nearly 100 points in 3 quarters alone. Basically put it into coast and just sort of shifted. Donovan Mitchell had 32 points. James Harden was steady. He had 22 points, 10 assists. Evan Mobley was solid with 17, and Max Strus lit up the Raptors for 24 points. It was just not pretty. RJ Barrett led Toronto with 24 points, but had a rough night defensively. Scotty Barnes had 21. Brandon Ingram and Jamal Shed had 17 points each. I think their newness to the playoffs definitely showed. And, the fact that they haven't been in the playoffs since 2022, and almost every single person on that team doesn't have experience in the playoffs. It's an interesting situation for them to find themselves in.
BI needs to be better, more of a factor.
100%.
And they've got to shoot better, and the foul line has to be their friend, not their enemy. Let's talk about the Jays. Watching them, I was watching the game, and they had that big inning, that big first inning. Where were all those runs? They could have used a couple here and there, let me tell you.
The sign that they had in the first couple of games of the season that said, "Wake up, Jacket, we need you," for their home run jacket probably could have been used more here. I'm glad that Toronto managed to snap a 4-game losing streak and also end Arizona's 4-game winning streak. Starting pitcher Ryan Nelson got rocked for 8 runs and got just 1 out. The first 8 Blue Jays batters actually reached base on 5 singles, 2 doubles, and a walk. Nelson finally struck out Brandon Valenzuela, but Luke's followed up with a base-clearing double for an 8-0 lead, and that was only 30 pitches into Ryan Nelson's day. Godwin was consistent. He gave up 2 runs over 6 solid innings. He permitted 7 hits and a walk while striking out 4. And Luke's, who entered the game batting 162, he's been having a rough go of it this season, finished with 3 hits. So the D-backs are off today before continuing their homestand on Tuesday, and the Jays are going to be playing the Angels. Dylan Cease is going to be on the mound against Reed Detmer, so that should be interesting to watch.
Looking at Montreal in the playoffs, let's go to our Canadian teams and Slavkovsky. 3 goals in game 1, matching Matthews' output last season in the 2 series.
Yeah.
Both first overall picks. I think it looks like Montreal has the better first overall pick. If you're a fan of the playoffs and winning the cup, if you're a fan of most goals during the regular season, it's a toss-up.
And it was good to see Slavkovsky have that success out there. Honestly, like a hat trick, and to win it in overtime the way that he did was absolutely fantastic. I believe all 3 of his goals were power play goals too.
All of them, yes. Yes. They were 3 for 5, and all 3 of the goals they got were his.
And it sort of takes the air out of Tampa a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong.
Well,
Tampa is a very good team.
Tampa was the 3rd best penalty killer in the league during the season. So that's quite the feat that Montreal had. That's 60%, right? If my math's correct, 3 out of 5. That's scoring 60% of the time on the power play. When 20 or 30 is a good average. Almost double a good average.
And, Tampa Bay isn't as bad as they may have looked at points. Montreal certainly played above their heads in this game as well. Game 2's tomorrow at 7 o'clock, so that'll be an interesting one to watch.
The Sens, they lost 2-0. They could not find the net behind Anderson, the former Leaf.
No, and you know what? Honestly, Freddie Anderson was the right person to start in Ottawa. I don't know if it's something lingering from his time with the Leafs, but I definitely seemed like he really wanted to win there. As we mentioned earlier, Jordan Staal and Brady Tkachuk dropped the gloves 3 seconds in. That certainly seemed to wake up the crowd and wake up the Hurricanes more than the Senators. It's one of those situations where you think you're trying to do the right thing, but unfortunately you end up kneecapping your team because you're in the box because you were trying to set the tone. And I'm not sure if Brady understands that, but time will tell. Their next game is, I believe, tonight, so that's going to be something fun to watch as well. I don't think we're going to see the same pyrotechnics as we did before, but it will certainly be interesting.
Don't bet on it. I got to tell you, it's funny. The most of the hitting was Carolina. Carolina did most of the hitting. I think they doubled up on Ottawa on the hits. Okay, let's talk about the Jets on 2 fronts. They signed a 27-year-old forward, and there's rumors their goaltender's on the way out, going to be traded. Ooh, that's scary stuff.
Yeah, so first off, Cole Koepke signed a contract extension with the Jets. The Athletics' Chris Johnston was reporting that it's a 2-year deal worth $2.9 million in total value, or $1.45 million a year. Now, he's a 27-year-old who had originally signed with the Jets before the 25-26 season on a 1-year contract for $1 million. He then played 66 games for Winnipeg, recording 17 points that included 8 goals and 9 assists. He was originally a 6th rounder picked by Tampa Bay back in 2018. He spent his time after being drafted playing college hockey at Minnesota Duluth. Spent a couple seasons with the Lightning that was mostly down with the Syracuse Crunch. Before the 24-25 season, Koepke joined the Bruins and recorded 17 points, 10 goals, and 7 assists. That eventually brought him to Winnipeg, and they obviously feel that he's a good fit for them. Also, if it turns out the 27-year-old doesn't work out, his $1.45 million contract is variable. So they don't necessarily have to be hurt by him if they don't need to. The other trade rumor that we had here was after a rather rough season, the Panthers have Sergei Bobrovsky coming off contract. That means that they've got a need and an open space, which means that, it is possible that Connor Hellebuck could join them. There's a number of factors at play, including his discontent with how his season went with the Winnipeg Jets. He's also got 4 years left at $8.5 million per, and he's going to be 33 next season. So, and again, this is a situation like with Matthews. Maybe the change of scenery would do him good. Maybe playing in his home country will help shore him up a little bit more.
Little beach time.
And here's the thing: the Panthers, having won back-to-back Stanley Cup before missing the playoffs this year, may need him to pick up the back end. Florida should have a top 10 pick in the draft, which is also a possible trade asset in this situation here. So there's no reason to believe that it can happen, but it could. And I think for the rest of the Eastern Division, especially at the Atlantic, that is terrifying. Terrifying news.
Let's go to the Oilers and let's talk about Draisaitl. They're 1-2, Connor McDavid, 2 best players in the world. We talk about it all the time. This Edmonton team should be a little different and a little better with Draisaitl on it.
That's true. The Draisaitl watch is still on. Draisaitl set up the last 14 games of the regular season with a knee injury sustained March 15th when he was checked by Nashville's Ozzy Weisblatt. Now, here's the thing. They're going into play the Anaheim Ducks, who have notorious leaf killer Radko Gudas, who likes knees. So this is something that they need to potentially be aware of. He's got 141 points in 96 career playoff games, and as a 1-2 punch with Connor McDavid, that is certainly dominant and frightening for the Ducks. Knobloch hasn't cleared him. He has been skating, but at the same time, they haven't given him the all clear yet. But we'll keep an eye out and see if anything big happens.
Absolutely. Well, let's see how Edmonton does tonight. It's going to be a fun game to watch. We're going to enjoy watching it. Enjoy the hockey tonight, Aaron, and thanks for doing this as usual.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Always glad to be here.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Sinishi. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Wednesday. Have a great day, everybody.